Join us for the Dear Emmy Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Dear Emmy. Today is an especially special show. Sister Jinx is here with me. And Jinx, I'm going to call you Tracy because I call you Tracy. And I know that we're going to talk about a subject that is very, very close to my heart and yours. And this is about how we grieve when we lose children of our own.
Yep. Hi. And yeah, that's fine if you call me Tracy. I've been, most people have gotten used to the fact that that's my name. A lot of people still know me as Sister Jinx, but I am Tracy. And yeah, we are going to talk about something that's really close to both of us. And I'm going to share some stuff with your audience today that a lot of people haven't heard the whole story of yet, even in my own life.
I always said if I lost my daughter, my ex-husband would have told you that I would have just totally lost it. I would have been a vegetable. That would have been it. I would not have been able to exist in the life that I now exist in.
It's funny that you say what you just said as far as not being able to get through it, because I think a lot of people think that. It was really strange for me because it couldn't have been much more than 6 months before our own loss. A notice had come home with the kids from school about a set of twins who had died in a house fire.
Oh.
And they were elementary school students, too. They had gone to school with my children.
Mm-hmm.
And we get the notice, and it comes home, and I read through it, and I burst into tears, and I was hysterical, as if I'd lost my own child. And my husband looks at me and says, "What is wrong with you?" And I told him what had happened. He says, "Tracy, you don't even know these kids." And I said, "You know what? I don't have to know these kids. I feel like I suddenly just knew what their mother kind of would have felt like." And at the same time, I didn't, because I'm going to say right now that I've had people come up to me and say, "I know just how you feel because da-da-da-da-da, whatever. They've been through this or that or the other thing." Nobody knows what that feels like until you've been through it yourself.
Exactly.
And I want to say this, too, that even though I've lost a child, and let's say Joe down the street comes to me and says he's lost a child, that doesn't mean we haven't the same experience of it either. I don't know how he's feeling. I can understand some of it, and I can be there for him, but I can't say that I understand what he's going through because we each experience these things differently as well. And I actually wanted to start off the show by saying this. What I'm going to share today is my experience. It's my experience of this. It's what I went through, and it's the spiritual beliefs and things that I held on to get me through this situation. What I'm going to share today is not going to work for every one of you. And
Exactly.
I don't expect that. And I don't expect you to believe everything I say and to hold it as your own. What I'm going to tell you is this. This is the one thing that I truly believe, and if you're going through grief right now or at some point in your future, which we all do at some point in our lives, don't ever let anybody tell you that there's a specific timeline to get over it. We all go through it in our own time.
Yeah, because how long has it been since you lost your little girl?
Well, it'll be 10 years in October.
And her name was Ashley.
And her name was Ashley. Ashley was probably the most spiritual person to this day that I've ever met. And she was 8 years old.
Yeah.
I tell people, and I told the story today about her telling someone who tried to get her to ask Jesus into her heart. She looked right at him and said, "Why would I ask somebody into my heart that's lived there since the day I was born?" And what do you say to a 7-year-old that's looking at you saying something like that?
Mm-hmm. There you go.
She had it together. She sure did. And I really believe that she was probably too spiritual for this world anyway. I'll share with you quickly the story. I won't go into the whole thing. But my daughter was 8 years old, and our youngest son was 7. And, of course, we had an older son, too, who was, 7, 8, 9. They were all a year apart, so I have to think. My husband and my 9-year-old were sitting in the living room, and they were playing on the PlayStation together and having a nice little day. And my 2 younger ones, my 7 and 8-year-old, which was Johnny and Ashley, were out in the garage jumping up and down on a fold-out couch. They had folded it out into a bed, and they were jumping up and down. We were out there playing together. And they were extremely close with each other. They were inseparable.
Yes.
People thought they were twins, actually.
Yeah.
Because they were so inseparable, and they looked a lot alike. And at one point, I finally said, okay, guys, I have to go in and start supper. I'm going to let you stay out here and play for 5 more minutes while I start supper. Make sure you come in 5 minutes, because I could see them from the window.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went in the house and I started getting supper together. And, you know, you get busy and you're not paying too much attention. But the kids were really good, and they came in about 5-10 minutes later. And they're sitting there and they're getting their shoes off. And I don't know, Ashley got it in her mind that she wanted to do something different. And you didn't really... Ashley was one of those kids that if she pouted out her lip, that was it. She got her way.
Of course.
She was just that was her energy, and she was so beautiful, and there wasn't any way you could deny what she wanted. She says, Mama, can we just go out and jump on the couch for another half an hour? And I said, well, Ashley, I have to cook supper. I really don't want you out there by yourself. And she says, we promise we'll stay in the garage. Please, please, Mommy, can we do it? And so I gave in because I'm kind of a sucker. And they knew it.
Yeah.
And so I let them go out to the garage, and I watched them walk out there, and I watched them go in and pull the couch back out and start jumping up and down, and I turned around and started getting things together. And here's another thing I'm going to say to you folks, especially you with children. It only takes a second, and you never know when that second's going to be, and you never know what's going to happen in that second that you're not paying attention.
Yes.
And in 15 minutes, the 15 minutes that I was turned around getting stuff together and not paying enough attention, all of a sudden Johnny comes bursting through the door. Now, this is my little 7-year-old, just as blonde as he can be, little boy, and he's got tears in his eyes, and you can see the fright on his face. And I'm going to share a sentence with you that I'm going to warn you right now is going to tear your heart out. So if you're really sensitive and don't want to hear this, take your earphones off for about 30 seconds. He comes bursting through the door and he says, Mommy, Daddy, Ashley tried to walk to the store by herself. She got hit by a car and I think she's dead.
Oh, my God.
I'm taking a breath here. Sorry.
Me too.
That's probably the hardest part for me to get through.
Me too. Just so everybody knows that. Whew.
That's a really difficult sentence for me to get through, and I've never gotten through it without bursting into tears. So, at that point, obviously, we ran out the door. I didn't even realize, it didn't occur to me at that point in time that Johnny had her shoes in his hand, and I'll explain that in a minute. John ran down the street to find her. I didn't want to leave the two boys by themselves, so I didn't run down right away. I stuffed them in the van, and I drove down.
Right.
And I never saw her. Nobody ever let me get near her. I was screaming bloody murder. I gave the ambulance people nightmares for a week. I happen to know some people who related to them, so I know this now. But John sat with her the whole time.
Okay.
And John's my husband. By the way, I know some of you don't know that, so let me share that real quick.
Yeah.
What I found out later was that I could have lost both of them because Johnny, when Ashley was hit, her shoes flew in the air, and he ran out in the road and grabbed her shoes and brought them back home with him. I don't know what possessed him to do that, but that's what he did. And I'm not going to go into a lot more detail there. I think that's quite enough, and it's traumatizing. It was traumatizing enough for us. I don't want to traumatize everybody. But I will tell you that at that moment, I went into shock. And I will tell you, it was that moment I went into shock. I don't think that I knew. I mean, I think I knew, like, the second he said it, that she really was gone. You just know. And I went on what I call autopilot from that day forward. And from that day on, for 3 years, I was on what I call autopilot. I don't remember who came to the house. I don't remember who was at the funeral.
Yeah, I hear you.
I really don't have a lot of memory. What I do remember is some of these stupid things people say to you when you're going through grief.
Oh, yeah. So there's bound to be plenty.
People telling me I didn't love my daughter because at the wake I was so calm. Because I'm one of those people that I don't like to cry in front of other people. Well, I'll share with you something nobody really knows except my husband. And so now 9,000 people now get to know this, and y'all, some of you aren't even close to me. I know a lot of my friends are listening today, and by the way, welcome to the show. I felt like they were all watching me, waiting for me to break down, like I was their entertainment.
Oh, yeah.
I know that's not what it was.
I know, but you do feel that way, don't you? It's like, oh, how much is she going to break down? What's she going to do? How's she going to handle this? What are they going to do?
And I think because of that, I put up these big walls like you were talking about,
Oh, yeah.
and I didn't let myself. And I heard
Yep.
later some people had said, oh, she didn't love her daughter because she didn't break down. But you know what? They didn't all see what was going on at the house behind closed doors. They didn't see me running into my room 2 or 3 times a day to cry so that my kids wouldn't see me crying. They didn't
Yeah,
see
because
me
you
spending
had
two
two.
hours at night crying with my husband every night or waking up screaming because I thought that she was there and waking up knowing she wasn't.
Yeah, and you had two other kids that you had to be strong for and raise. But at the time, I can certainly relate to that. And it's
Well, they
been
were little.
how many? I was going to say that's the next thing. Let's tell them how many years ago it's been since Ashley's been gone.
Like I said, it'll be 10 years in October. So, Johnny was 7 when he watched this happen, and he watched this happen. He watched her get hit. He's the only one who ever stayed with a consistent story, by the way. The man that actually hit my daughter told 5 different stories, and none of them were the same, and none of them matched what Johnny told consistently. But because Johnny was 7, no one would listen to him.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's very strange because I can tell you not only how I went through this and what my experience of it was, but because Johnny is such an amazing and different kind of kid, he did what I call self-therapy. He would tell anybody and everybody, and God help you if you came near him at that time because you'd have to listen to it, the story of exactly detail for detail what happened. He would get his little matchbox cars out and make little roads and
Oh,
stuff and
Lord.
show you what
Oh,
happened
my God.
over and over and over.
And he's never forgotten that even now.
But you know what? It was good for him to do that because that was like therapy for him. And in doing that, he really healed in a way that I can't even explain because, most kids still would be really traumatized by
Oh,
what
yeah.
he saw and went through.
Yeah. That's amazing, honey.
But, I said I went into shock. I went into denial. I didn't want to believe it. I really was in shock. And that night, we went to the hospital, and it's unbelievable the amount of family that showed up. Now, I don't have a big family, but my husband does. And the amount of family that showed up at the hospital was just amazing to me. We ended up moving the impromptu wake, kind of, from the hospital to one of my husband's uncle's houses. And on the way there, now mind you, this was October 9th. And yes, in Maine, it sometimes snows in October, but not usually the first week or week and a half of October, okay? On the way to his uncle's house, it started snowing.
Uh-huh.
And a song came on the radio, and I don't know how many of you listen to country music, but Google this song if you've never heard it, and it was called I Hope You Dance by Leanne Womack.
Yes.
And Johnny looked at me and said, Mama, Ashley made it snow.
Aw, isn't that sweet?
And I Hope You Dance really was what I considered to be her song, and I felt like she was playing that for us.
Of course. Of course. Yeah.
And so as much shock as I was in, I really, that was, there was a lot there I could still kind of connect with. And I think there were moments where I could be very connected to my own emotions. But when you're in that much pain, I think the shock is a protection mechanism.
It sure is, honey. I agree with that, and we do. You brought it up around you so that you could handle it your way and still focus on what you were supposed to do for everyone else. And I think
that was a big thing, When you focus on other people when you're going through something like this, sometimes that's a very protective thing because it's a distraction from what you're dealing with constantly. Sitting by yourself and thinking constantly about this is not healthy.
Oh, yep. But just the fact that we're here tonight talking about this on this show is a healing mechanism.
It is, and I really believe that, yes, it was tragic, and yes, it was something I definitely don't wish any parent to have to live through. No parent should have to bury their child. Okay, no parent. It is one of the worst things to ever have to live through.
Yep.
And you don't ever really get over it. I mean, I still miss her. She was my best friend, even at 8 years old. Something else that I mentioned earlier is that people say some of the dumbest things when you're grieving. Okay, and I'm not kidding. These are some. When somebody tells me that they hope my daughter, who is 8 years old, is up in heaven partying with Jerry Garcia, that's a really dumb thing to say. Okay.
Yes, because Jerry Garcia, of course, was part of the Deadheads, and
Right.
and certainly not one that we would think about our 8-year-old child up there partying with.
Like I said, people say some pretty stupid things.
Yeah.
If you want to avoid being one of those people that says the really stupid things, don't
Think,
talk.
yeah, just think before you say stuff.
Honestly, you have to remember that people who are grieving also hear things differently.
Yes.
Okay. So what you may be saying something that really is heartfelt and sweet, and it is really a nice thing, and they're still going to probably hear it wrong or possibly hear it wrong, because everything is distorted in your mind when you're in this kind of pain.
Yep, I agree.
I had a friend whose wife passed away shortly after Ashley did, and I turned and looked at him, and I knew he needed me to say something, but I knew nothing I could say was going to make any sense. And I reached out and hugged him, and I said, I'm really sorry, and if you want to talk, I'm here.
Yeah.
And that was all I said. And he looked at me and he said, that is probably the best thing anybody's said to me. Because people kept saying, I know how you feel. I've been through this. I can relate, yada, yada, yada. And he didn't want to hear any of that. He really couldn't hear any of that because for him, his pain was very unique and very fresh. And he couldn't hear, I've been through this. I know what you're feeling like. No, damn it, you don't know what I'm feeling like.
Yep. You've not been in my shoes.
And it was important for him to have somebody say to him, I'm here if you want. I'm sorry. If you want to talk, I'm here just to listen.
Yeah. There you go.
One of the things I wanted to talk about is acceptance guilt. There are stages to grief, and the end of that is acceptance. And a lot of people never get to that acceptance because it feels like you're doing something wrong to accept it. It feels like you're saying you didn't love them by accepting it, but you're not. And it's okay to accept that they're gone, and it's okay to move forward with your life, but it's not always easy to do. People have to remember is, would your past loved one want you to continue this way? Do you believe? And that's why my daughter's song is "I Hope You Dance." That is the song that I believe my daughter left for us, and it's part of the reason that I believe that's her song, because she says, it basically is saying, no matter what you do, go forward and live your life and be happy and dance. And don't worry about the fact that this has happened or that has happened. Look ahead. And that was a big message from her, because she is a little guiding spirit, and she is a guardian spirit. And I'll share a story with you about what happened. It was probably 6 months after my daughter had passed. A friend of mine got in a really severe car accident. This man has no business still being alive. Quite honestly, he went right through the windshield on the passenger side. He was hit by a car. He went through the passenger side window. The person who hit him stomped on the brakes, and he was thrown 25 feet. Wow. And I woke up out of a dead sleep because I knew something had happened. I could feel the pain. I was shocked awake. And but I didn't know till later on the next day what had happened. And I will tell you now, this man, my daughter thought of him as an uncle. She absolutely adored him, and I really believe that she was watching over him and protecting him. And this is what 100% I believe my daughter was supposed to be doing. She came to this earth simply to help me learn a lesson, to help me have an experience. I said at the beginning of the show, a lot of the beliefs that I'm going to share today are things that helped me get through this, and they are my beliefs, and it doesn't mean that I expect anybody else to believe them. But one of the things that I believe is that we all come from the same place, and we all return to the same place. And I believe that we make what Beth would say as soul agreements before we get here, where we make these agreements with other spirits that we know we're going to learn lessons with.
I agree.
And though I knew that this was a lesson I was going to have to learn, Ashley was a friend of mine on the other side. she chose to come back here with me to help me experience this so that she could be here for me for that short period of time. And I'll see her again when I cross.
Well, and I think part of it, guys, I'm going to jump in here, is that, and I truly, truly, truly believe this, and whether we believe in reincarnation or not, I think that we as souls make our choices of why we're coming down to Earth to learn what lessons we need to learn, or maybe we need to teach somebody else a lesson, and we're asked to come back to do that. And I truly, honest to goodness, believe that.
Yeah,